Okay, so I'm going to prepare the dough, and this is going to be no knead bread. So I use 3 cups of bread flour, which is 440 gram roughly, and then I added salt, kosher salt here, which is about 3/4 teaspoon. And once you add salt, I'm gonna just mix it so everything is mixed evenly first. Just a little bit, maybe there's no special technique here. Just doing it mixing. Just salt will not be in just one place. Okay, and then for this one, I'm going to use my starter culture here that I made. If you use dry active yeast, fast rise yeast, then you can use, I think, the 1/4 teaspoon, very small amount, because we're going to ferment it for a long time. And I use this starter culture 1/4 cup. So you have here, I'm going to sort of scoop it out, kind of gooey here. Come on up. So scoop it out like that, maybe a little more after that. I'm going to add this. Just break it into a little bit. If you add a little bit less yeast or starter culture, you're gonna need more time to ferment before dough developed. Or if you add a little more, then you're gonna have less time. So I'm gonna add a little bit more here. I think that should be enough. So put it down here and then wait. Okay, there you go. And then after that, it's very simple. I'm going to make 75% hydration, which is 75% of dough. Flour weight will be water. So this is going to be 330 gram of water, cold water. I'm just gonna pour it in and just mix it until it's all the flour is wet, and that's when you stop. It's gonna take maybe a couple of minutes to mixing. Although we don't do kneading, still we have to mix it fairly thoroughly. So I'm just gonna keep mixing. And sometimes you feel like it feels like it's too dry, but if you just keep mixing, then eventually it'll be kind of a wet, sticky dough. And somewhere in the middle, I try to scrape off the flour in the wall of the bowl. It's just that, it's just what I do here. You don't have to do exactly the same on this. Anyway, I just keep mixing. And it looks a little dry, but if you mix it a little bit more, then it'll turn into a little bit wet dough. So inside is a little bit wet, outside was a little dry, but if you just keep mixing, then everything will be a little wet. And you don't have to mix really a lot. Now that's becoming a little bit sticky. Like that. At the end, I just try to put everything in the middle of the bowl. Like that. And that's it. After that, we just need to use a plastic wrap. Cover it up. And then we'll wait until tomorrow morning for this dough to rise. It takes about, this time, March, I set our temperature in the house is about 69 degrees Fahrenheit. And the temperature is going to take about 12 to 14 hours. During the summer, it takes much less time. But typically about 10 to 12 hours is what I usually let it rise. And then we'll ship the dough once it's risen. So it's after 14 hours, it looks like this. I think it's ready. Maybe after shaping, during the shaping we can, after shaping we can let it proof for hour or so if you want. But anyway, that's ready. Dough is ready, risen really well. And then I have this tray, baking tray. I'm going to use this to shape the dough, and I'm just going to flour it because it is relatively wet dough. You may need a little bit generous amount of flour. That's possible. I'll see how it goes. Like that. And once you shape the dough, then I'm going to add the dough, put the dough on a bowl like this. And some people use proofing basket, but I don't because I don't have one. So I'm going to use this, and then we have this drying towel, dish towel. And I'm just going to put it in here like that. It's much easier to handle like this for me. Because the flour sticks on the cloth much better. So I'm going to use this and then flour it again. Like this. And that's what it is. And then I'm going to grab it. A dough scraper and open. And I'm going to scrape it down. This. And without flouring it, I'll just fold it several times. I use tray because it's easier to rotate and then fold for me. So there are different ways to shape the dough, but I'm using this folding technique. So this top part will be the seam, and then I'll just keep it there. Maybe a little bit more flour there. You could add a little bit more flour. And this part too. Here to shape it like that. So seam side up. Just gonna use the dough scraper, flip it and put it on right here in the bowl. Once that's done, I usually add a little bit of flour. not too much. And then put this on like that. And I'm going to leave it like this for depending on how soon you want your bread. 30 minutes to a couple of hours, depending on how fast you want or how much you proof. If you see a little bit of dough risen, and then push this cloth up, that's probably when I stop proofing and then start baking. So depends on, well, you can turn on the preheat the oven now, or maybe 30 minutes or so later you can start preheating. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes for our oven to preheat to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. So depending on how fast your oven heats up, you can start preheating whenever you have to. So it has been an hour or so, and you can see there's a little bit of a mark that the dough has risen a little bit more during the proofing time. And in the bowl, if you cover it up, uncover it, then it looks like this a little bit. You can wait a little bit longer, or you can go ahead and then prepare baking. I've been preheating oven to 450, and I put the my Corning ware like this in the oven while preheating. And the tricky thing is that once you have this dough, how to put this dough in the bowl. So here's an empty bowl. Imagine that you have a dough inside. Then I use my two hands and then flip it and then put it in the bowl. That's how I do it. So that could be a little bit tricky part, and then need maybe a little bit of practice. But even if it's not perfect, that's still the bread still comes out pretty nicely. So you don't have to worry about too much. Just be careful not to burn your finger. Just add my dough here. It turned out that my dough was too sticky, and I didn't put enough flour on the towel, so part of it is staying on the drying towel. So it's better to put a little bit more flour there. And once you're done, you don't have to do it this time, but once you have this dough in the bowl, then you can sort of use your sear to score it on both sides. But then we already have damaged dough on the top, so I don't think that is really necessary this time. But anyway, typically when you don't have this damaged dough, then you need to score it so it can rise a little bit better during the baking. Okay, so it has been 30 minutes. So I'm going to open the oven door and then remove the lid. Okay, like in here. Then it looks like this. Ooh, a little too bright. There. Okay, and then I'm going to bake about 10-15 more minutes. So I baked the bread around 11 more minutes without the lid, and I came out like this. The same temperature, 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and 30 minutes baking with lid on, and about 11 minutes without the lid. You can bake a little more. You can bake a little more depending on how dark you want the crust to be. But 11 minutes was okay this time. And then you need to wait until it cools down, at least for 30 minutes or so, and then you can cut it and enjoy. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but typically you need to wait until it cools down completely before you cut.